Hey everyone, it's Fred here from Hillians Bricks and I hope you're well. Now let me tell you, I am quite excited about recording this video. Now I have made quite a lot of notes, so apologies if I keep looking down, but yes, so this is going to be particularly interested to Bricklink store owners, this video. So before I get started, I want to ask, the Bricklink store owners, what sort of metrics do you tend to use to make your purchasing decisions? Now, I'm pretty sure that 90% or more will probably say you look at part-out value ratios and looking for a ratio of 3 or above, or some sort of ratio that's linked to part-out values, right? So I must admit, I was doing similar things, and it's kind of the only real metric that most people go by to make those decisions. It's the only thing that we can really look at and make some informed decisions, right? Now, here are some problems with part-out values. If you're starting to use that, I already mentioned probably 90% of you probably be using a similar thing. So that will likely mean that in your market, most people will be buying the same sort of sets to part out. So that kind of leads to an oversupply in the market. Also, when it comes to new sets, some of the prices are overpriced and some of the parts are overpriced, I mean. And we can see the part out value rapidly declines within the first year for certain sets. So sometimes like 20-25%. And also, when you have the parts in the set, you're not really sure how much of that will sell. Will you end up being stuck with some parts for a long time or sometimes even forever? So you don't even know necessarily what the demand is for every single set, right? So that's sort of the issue with Bricklink. It's kind of the dilemma everybody has. I often get questions on my Discord, like how quickly do you break even, or when do you start seeing a return on investment? And until now, I never really had a clear answer on that. It's kind of just, well, I'm kind of think I see bricks selling, and I kind of hope everything kind of goes at one point, right? Never sure how long it will take. That's the honest answer. So it made me think there must be some way of trying to do some more analysis, seeing if there's better ways of looking at it, always trying to find some way of doing something different than other people are doing. Now, I said at the beginning of the video, I'm quite excited, and I feel like I've cracked Bricklink more or less. So I know that's a big statement to make, but I built some new analysis tool. And what this tool is actually taking into consideration is a few things. So it still takes into consideration like the part-out values of the sets, but it also considers every single set, what parts it has in it and the number of them. It also considers, what the last 6 months sales volume was and the current volume availability for each market. So I've done this by currency. So what this has done is given me the opportunity to look at which sets have what expected return on investment. So I can actually look at, after 6 months, I can expect to sell X amount of stock, and this should give me back X amount of money. And therefore I can see which ones are the best sets from a return on investment perspective and which ones are not. So I started off doing this analysis, looking at my part out value list, and started for now with the top 75 sets from the UK based on the ratio that we have. And I do plan to expand that to about 180 sets over the next month in terms of the sets that I'm going to be analyzing, and any new sets that appear within the top ratios, I will clearly be looking at those as well. So what have I done? So I've done an analysis so far for the UK, so British pounds, for the Eurozone, so for in Europe, anything that's in euros, Canadian dollars and Australian dollars. Now I'm currently unable to do this for the US. If there's any US store owners who want to offer some assistance, just ping me a message, because there are some details that I may need that people may not be comfortable sharing, and I totally understand that. But ping me a message and I'll let you know what I would need. So what have I seen so far? Initially, when I looked at my part out value analysis, which I still plan on doing and continue doing it because it's useful information as well, across the markets, you could see that the top 25 was very much set between the different markets, because part out values, the pricing within the markets, across the markets for the sets, is very similar for all the parts, right? Now let me tell you, this analysis, what I've done, does not have any similarities between the markets. So every market is very different in terms of which sets are better than others to buy. It is very market specific because it takes into consideration the supply and demand of all the parts that are selling within that market, and therefore you see completely different top 10s and whatsoever between the markets. So if you're going to be interested in signing up for this later on, make sure that you only sign up to the relevant market. Now let me show you some examples of what the output is of this data. It's just to give you some perspective and kind of an understanding what the numbers sort of mean. So we're going to be looking first of all at one example from the UK market, and we're going to look at the 40461, which is the tulips. So this was a set, if you looked at the part-out value analysis for the last year most, it's always in like the top 5, top 10 in terms of the best sets from a part-out value. So it's probably one set that was quite popular to buy, quite a cheap one. Now when we look at the scoring that I have from my metric here, you can see a score of 13.18%. Now what does this mean? So this metric is very much linked to the supply and demand of the contents of this set. So it could be interpreted that after 6 months you can more or less expect to sell 13% of the stock within that set. So that's kind of how you can interpret it. I must say I've done some analysis for Australia and had a set that was over 100%. So there's clearly a lot of demand for it and not enough supply. But yeah, mostly it's way below 100% most sets. But yeah, that's how you could interpret that. Now the expected return is based on the last 6 months sales, so the volumes, plus the current supply that's available, but also taken into the last 6 months part-out values for the parts that are in that set. So for this set, the tulips, you can expect to only recover about £1.71 after 6 months if you parted this set out. So not a great return, right? So that works out, if you base it on the RRP of £9 in the UK, you only get an expected return of 19%. Now, you might still sell all the other parts later on, and that could take forever. What to me this is suggesting is that this set has been way too much parted out in the market, because probably lots of people saw the part out value ratio and parted out, so the supply is way too high and the demand is low. So parts may still sell over time, but at this moment in time it's been probably one to avoid and not part out anymore, right? Now let's look at the same set, but from the Australian market, and this will show you completely different numbers. Like I mentioned, every market is different. So for Australia, we got slightly better score of 20.26%, but the expected value that we're getting, a return value, it must be some of the parts are, that are selling there, get a better price, or a combination of the volumes and the price. But you expected a return of $7.70. So these are Australian dollars. And that gives an expected return of 51.4% based on the RRP in Australia. Now, still that's not great, but it shows that between the markets it's very different. So what that does tell me is that from a UK perspective, I think that this set has been parted out way too much. There's way too much supply, and it's just something that maybe in Australia has been parted out as well, but not as much. Now let's look at a completely other example as well, one that probably people would never part out, and let me tell you, I wouldn't part it out either, but it's UK market again, and we're looking at the Titanic, so 10294, and this is scored, surprisingly, a score of 60.68%, so you can almost consider that 60% of these parts would likely sell after 6 months. And remember, this is based on the last 6 months data, so there's not a guarantee that in the future, next 6 months, it will be the same. But it's kind of based on supply and demand again, right? Based on this data, it showed me an expected return of £573.65. So those parts would likely sell after 6 months, give you that amount of money back. We know that the RRP currently is £555 for the Titanic. So you can expect to recover over 100%. It's about 103% of these parts after 6 months. So clearly that would be better to part out than the tulips we just covered. So, but again, I do understand most people will A, not buy the Titanic to part out, and B, it's probably too big, as I said, to part out. And yeah, that's kind of the background behind that one. So every month we're going to be doing this sort of data analysis, and we're going to update this. And what we expect to see as well is going to start to show me trends of which, and then suddenly we're going to start to see expected values to go down, but we can also maybe see expected things to go up. So when they go down, to me that is either, okay, part out values might be going down as well, but it could also mean that lots of people have started to part out that set, and therefore there's suddenly a rush of supply of those parts available, and we expect to see a decline, or even the demand has completely dropped off. It could be both, right? But and vice versa, if we start to see a set creeping up, it means it hasn't been parted out in a while, the demand is picking up for that set, and it's going to be able to say, well, maybe need to keep an eye on that set because the percentage is going up, and maybe it's one that I need to consider to buy, to part out. because the expected return on investment is increasing. So that's the sort of things that we start to expect to see after a few months when we do this analysis every month, because we are going to be able to see trends developing as well. So here's some good news and some bad news. Well, the good news is that I'm going to be making this data available for the Euro, Canadian and Australian region at the moment. Hopefully I'm also going to be able to do this in the US in the future, but at the moment I can't. But it's going to be a new premium Patreon level, so it's not going to be on the current Patreon member level. And what we're also planning on doing is to cap this by market. So we know that this data is very powerful, and if everybody has access to this data, it becomes, you know, not powerful anymore, because everybody's going to start switching their purchasing decisions, and it's kind of going to be completely different, right? So therefore, we are going to cap it to about 1% of the market size for each market. So if there's like a, I don't know, like 1,500 Bricklink stores in a certain market, we're going to cap it to like 15 people who have access to this. So that's kind of like the rationale we'll take. It will be £35 a month, and I appreciate that, not the cheapest. But as I said, we do feel that this got a lot of power in terms of the data, and you'll also have the same benefits as the existing Patreon tier as well. So let me also lead this to the bad news. At this moment, I don't plan on making this data available yet in the UK. You know, clearly I feel that this is a competitive advantage that I have as a Bricklink store owner as well. But I also want to start seeing what the impact is if I start to add certain sets, if the next month, if it really drastically changes the percentage numbers or not really. If I don't see drastic changes because me as an individual starts to part out certain sets that are doing well, then I will likely be making it available as well in the UK to a limited number of people. But first I want to see what is the impact of me as an individual ordering some sets from this list and seeing the thing like that. Because yeah, I plan on using this list now, not caring anymore about part out value ratios, just purely expected return on investment from that is, for me, is the target. I'm here to, you know, make money. I'm not here to store stock for the sake of it, right? So that's why I'm kind of doing this. So if you're interested in that, there is going to be a link in the description of the video to check out the Patreon site. As I said, we've got 3 markets right now. Hopefully we're going to be adding the US at some point. But yeah, thanks for your support. I'll be interested to hear your comments. So please write them down. But yeah, thanks for your support as always, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.